Let's look at the FS ecology, and we called it the ecology from the very beginning. We never called it strategy, organization chart, uh, graphic. We always called it the ecology. Uh, you'll know why as it unfolds. But let's move. So I'm gonna give you some background to Forever Sabah that some of you probably don't know. So speaking about systems, you just saw the world just now when we zoomed into Southeast Asia. And then you can see where Borneo is and where Sabah is. And the question that we started with in 2011 was, where will Sabah be in 50 years if we continue on our current development trajectory? And we had all kinds of workshops and gatherings and events with government, with NGOs, with communities, with logging companies, with academics, asking this question and seeing what surfaced. What was really interesting that it always inspired quite a deep conversation about life and grandchildren, and it doesn't matter who we talk with. For example, with the logging company, when we asked this question, the owners of these companies talked about education. I talked about the education system, not something that you would expect from that, that group of people. So moving on, we called it the first wave. The first 5 years of Forever Sabah was the first wave. We called it 5 waves of 5 years each. So this was the first wave. And if you zoom in, we started with convening and engaging. And it was a 2-year process from 2011, 2012, 2013. And we had many workshops, many gatherings. I would say a few thousand people probably were involved in it. And this was done by LEAP. And lots of post-its and lots of flip charts. And we just asked that question. And we gathered the data. And moving on, this is a real thing. This was an Excel spreadsheet. So all the events we did, all here. And at every event, what were the themes that came up? So we clustered them. Everything that everybody said in every post-it, in every flip chart was integrated here. And this was done by Martin Vogel. He was the first person we hired. So, this is many, gatherings, as I said, lots of conversations, and everything was integrated like this. And then from here, we clustered them and we started to see, well, what were the main themes that emerged? What did people talk about? What did people care about if you talk about 50 years from now? And we put them in different colors. So this connected from the Excel sheet, this went to this. So it's everything all over the floor and clustering. So we talked about forests. If you zoom in, you can see the woods. And this is all available if anybody wants to go back into FS. But you can see here, community-based ecotourism enterprise, food enterprise, other enterprises, so livelihoods, documentation, research, community conservation, renewable energy in the communities, working with plantations, ITP certification, renewable energy, large-scale industry, Yayasan Sabah, SFMLAs, water security, um, branding, certification, communications, Sabah as a net carbon sink, Sabah carbon framework. FS Institute was there at the very beginning, from those first years. Um, Land matters, incentives, ecosystem services valuation. So moving on, we took those and we started to see who said what. Oh, this NGO said this government agency said this company said this. And when we started to see, were there anything that looked like projects? Did anybody say, we really want to do this? We want to work on this. And we have a grouping here that are interested. So we identified those. We identified who they were and what they wanted to do. And then we had workshops with them. So individual workshops with those people who wanted to talk about that issue. And then from there, we developed, well, here's the solution, here's the plan, here's the vision. Moving on. So we then developed this first wave. And these were the things that emerged as the focal areas: waste, water, soil, watersheds, forests, renewable energy, tourism, food and agriculture. These are all things that are now in our focal areas. And they have been merged together in some cases. And you can see all of these in our ecology. We developed very slowly the FS ecology. This is not what it looks like today, but it didn't look like this in the very beginning. It has the general look and shape, but we evolved it to have finer detail. But early on, we already had this living landscape and living seascape. We called it living. I mean, there was a specific reason for that, and that is for us to reclaim the human in nature, because old school Western conservation from the 1800s took humans out of nature and called that conservation. So some of the first protected areas were in the US, like Yosemite National Park. The first thing they did was they took out the original people, the Miwok people. They fenced it up and they said, this is a protected area. It's pristine without people. But they didn't know, of course, at the time, that those people who had been there thousands of years kept that nature like that. The reason the forest was like that was that they would take the biomass whenever it was the right season and they would burn. They had a fire ecology. They had a system to keep biomass in the forest low. There were deep reasons why we called it living landscape, living seascape, to reclaim our place within the ecosystem. Humans are part of it. And everywhere you go in Sabah, there are humans. And to work from a place that said, we need to separate humans from nature, and we need that value is at our very core, would have fundamentally shaped everything we did. But instead, we work with the complexity that humans are in landscapes and seascapes. So from there, this middle line is not a passive line. Nature gives way to culture, gives way to the economy. So nature becomes culture, becomes economy. And this detail we came to, I can't remember which year it was, in one of our retreats. Some of you may remember. This line before that was empty. And then we put something in the middle. 2018, thank you, Noel. Nature, culture, economy. We said that the economy comes from the cultural landscape, which comes from the natural landscape. Okay, so from there, open up into what we call our focal areas. So you saw just now the origins of those focal areas. So we put together food, agriculture, and fisheries. we say these are a system. It's about, what we eat, basically. What we eat locally, but what we eat, what we export regionally, what we import, everything. So that's how it was put together. And then energy. So talking about power, or talking about current, infrastructure, and waste. So a lot of thought went into why would these things go together. I don't remember the detail, but I do remember at the beginning, we had, I think, energy and waste. Infrastructure, huh? Right. And then infrastructure was not there. But infrastructure came in later when we started to work on humans, habitats, highways. So that was integrated. The next focal area is forest, water, soil. And we found it was important to put those together. Forests and the soil on which the forest is, and then the water that is held within. And then moving on to the next focal area, livelihoods, tourism, and enterprise. So of all the areas of livelihoods that came up, the ones that kept on coming up for everybody was tourism. So it's not to say that we will only work on that, but so livelihoods and enterprise would cover everything, but there was a specific interest in tourism. So that's why it's articulated there. So from there, we opened up, and this also came later. These were our program areas. So focal areas, meaning the things we will focus on, and then program areas. And these Rafflesia leaves came also later on. At first, it was only here. And then from here, we went to the project. Then we had so many projects. Then we started to see that our projects had themes. And then we put them as programs. So there's a program and there's a project of a program. So of course, the Sabah 100% RSP or certified was something Forever Sabah initiated. We took the idea to the policymakers, wrote the concept note. Concept note was turned into a cabinet paper. Cabinet paper passed that in 2015. And then, of course, we continued working within that scenario. So that is, we see that as a program area. Why is it a program? Because it branches off into other things. This is the overall programmatic umbrella. Watersheds and communities also happened because we were invited by Sabah Forestry Department in the early days again, 2013, 2014, where they said, we would like to protect areas of Sabah that are water catchments. But at the moment, there are either protected areas like Sabah Parks, class 1 forest reserves, but we would like to actually protect the areas that give water to the people, either as water protection areas or water conservation areas. We have the law, but we have never enacted the law. We have not even gazetted one such area because there are communities everywhere. And we can't just go there and say, we're gazetting that, and you can't do anything. Or you can do 1, 2, 3. And so because they didn't have the capacity to engage with the communities, they asked if Forever Sabah would do that on behalf of DID and Sabah Forestry. And so that's why we called it watersheds and communities, because in every watershed, you will find communities. There is no watershed where there are no people. And so that became a programmatic area. Yeah. Organic farming, going back to food, agriculture, and fisheries. Why tiba-tiba organic farming was if Sabah was going to move in the direction of industrial agriculture, industrial fisheries, everything industrial, what is the disruption? what would be the intervention. And in those early discussions, everyone talked about what if we did small, locally produced, locally consumed, locally transported, not everything coming from Australia or China or wherever, but here in Sabah, in your neighborhood. So that's how it started. And as you know, it started with Kivatu Nature Farm. Forests, of course. Actually, this was added later because we thought forest is implicit here. But then I can't remember which year, we made it explicit as a program area, that we had to have forests as a program area. And this one, Lower Kinabatangan and Sagamang wetlands, that also came later when we said, because suddenly you have organic farming, forest, and tiba-tiba you have, why do you have this area, which is a protected area? It's actually, if you look at the catchment of Lower Kinabatangan Sagamang wetlands, you're talking about almost 1/4 of Sabah, from the ridge to the reef, from the all the way up to the hills, all the way to the coast. It's a huge part of Sabah. So we decided we call it a flagship landscape, because we work at the Ulu, and we work at the Hilir, and we work everywhere in between. So not just watersheds and communities, but everything from the headwaters to downriver of a landscape. So in a way, it's a flagship landscape. Opening up, we have sort of distinct projects, more or less under program areas, but somehow a little bit unique. So Humans, Habitats, Highways, that many of you know. So it was a distinct intervention when we looked at infrastructure. And we'd always been involved in Tanjung Aro Eco Development, the Sukau Bridge, the coal-fired power plant, all the issues there, and advocating for different solutions. So this then became something more systematic with regards to highways. So not just coal plants and bridges or whatever, but actually highways. Freshwater for Future was Casey's area of work, which really is connected to watersheds, but it's particularly about rivers, fisheries, people living by rivers and their fisheries, biodiversity in the rivers, the waterways, and basically fresh water for the future. So the science as well as practical water quality and such. Kivatu Nature Farm, I talked a little bit about earlier. You all know that, Mariela Simbang. So this was a small local model of this, but it's all models are not perfect, but they have done a lot in terms of training, outreach to other communities. Communities have come there for training, so it's a work in progress, but it is a living model, if you like. Community-based ecologically sustainable tourism, CBEST, that is actually taken a back seat, but we call this a partner. This is Copel. You all know Copel. This was a project with Copel to build, use that as a model for other communities. And it's still going on because all our communities go there for training. They go to other communities as well to share. Sharks and rays, we don't talk about it very much, but it is an area of work that we are facilitating with other NGOs, including WWF and others. We raise the funds, and it's a multi-year project on policy, education, and research. Okay, opening up is the layer of projects. I'm not going to go into all of them, but you all know where you are. There's HEH, there's the PS project, there's FPIC, although FPIC is very latent in a way. There's the HCV mapping, is still there because it's not done. At some point, we will consider it done, but we were and still are involved in it. The smallholder and livelihoods, and that's the team with Mega, Elisna, all the field team. So under this umbrella, we have this few things, and we are still involved at the higher level, which is with the JCSC and the Secretariat. And under Lower Kinabatangan Sagama wetlands, with Neville's work, the sustainable fisheries, alternative livelihood. So there are 8 villages, and they work with different components in the villages. Forever Sagama, you all know the one with Phoebe. So this came online last year. This one also started last year, Forests, Great Apes and Livelihoods. And that's in Dagat and Abay and where else? Dagat, Abay and what's that one? Huh? No, the under 3 villages in, no, in Ramsar site. How many villages? 2. And then in FMU 5, there are 3 villages. The FMU model is FMU 5, so it's continued work activating this. The UK PAC project, the PADI project, you can see that it's a little bit like a dial, right? You can dial this around, and although they're distinct programs, you can say, here's forests, this connects to forests, these connect to forest, that connects to forest, this connects to forest. You see what I'm saying? You cannot say that the only forest project we have is this, or you see what I'm saying? It is really kind of systemic everywhere. These things are actually quite systemic throughout Forever Sabah. And the more we go out like this, the more we go into landscapes rather than few kampongs, we see how everything interconnects like a web with each other. Okay, opening up, we have the pillars of governance, finance, and coordination. So there was a real reason that these were outside, creating the space for the work. And they're not in the middle. And the middle was the earth. And everything comes out from there. Coordination, why do we call it coordination and not management? Because how do you manage this? How do you control this? You don't, and you can't, and you shouldn't try to. So the job is to coordinate. Why do you have project coordinators? Why am I a chef? All these things are about coordination. And that is about communication, keeping things together, making sure, we know where people are and who needs to go where and who needs to go there. And so it isn't about managing in a linear way every single thing here. Does that make sense? Although at some level, of course, there's management. Your work plan, you are managing, but you are mostly coordinating your work plan, right? Finance, how do you fund everything here in all the various ways they are funded and by who? Everything here is funded in a different way. There's a different model, if you like. There's a different alliance of funders. And then on the overall, there are also some things are straight up grants from foundations. Some things are almost like contracted in a way, like by a government agency, like DID working with us in Forever Sagama. In a way, they asked us to do a job, and here's a bunch of money from UNDP. Does that make sense? So everything is done in a unique way. There isn't really a one size fits all. And governance. You always hear, those of you who have met Prof. Halim, he talks about the quadruple helix. When I've shared about this in organization, in academic circles, they say, so, this is when I heard this term quadruple helix. I said, what does that mean? So it means you have all the sectors in your organization, either in the governance or in the way you work. So meaning public sector. Who's public sector on our board? Fred Coogan, Robert Ong. Who's private sector on our board? Anton Ngui, Lin Yong. Who is civil society on our board? You can name that. Who's academia? Who's community? So having all the sectors, and in this case 4, is why you call it quadruple helix. And they say that that's what you need in the organization of the future because all our problems are across sectors. So it was conscious that we do that in our board, that we have the board, the sectors represented. But it was a conscious decision for that. Then this blue and red DNA strands, in one of the retreats, I don't remember which one, we developed our values and principles. And so we say we're sovereign, but we're also, meaning you're sovereign, you are like a sovereign country. We are not bound, ruled by anybody, like politics or a government. We're sovereign, but we're interconnected. So it was a little bit like yin yang. We're efficient, but we're decentralized. So it doesn't mean to say like we're perfectly efficient, but these are values and principles. There's resilience and there's revolution. There's freedom, but there must be accountability. Not just freedom for freedom and freedom here, but freedom and accountability. Bottom up and leadership. So you are bottom up where you are with your communities, let's say Ramsar site. There is all bottom up action and decision making, but there's leadership. And you are a leader. It's professional and it's joyful. So this is because professional doesn't mean you're like muram or masam. It is also joyful. It's self-replicating, meaning it builds on itself, and there's reciprocity. Reciprocity is, you know, like in all the villages that we work in, you know, there's reciprocity. We gift something, we give something, we bring something like the Paddy Project, but the reciprocal relationship is you get infinite amounts more of goodwill, of everything. As much as we give or we bring, we are also getting it back. There's responsibility, there's diversity, respect, courage, supportive, and independent. So these things are not limited to only this. It's just we named a few. So the pillars of the institution, connected by the values and principles, create the space for the content. So this is actually what is important. A lot of institutions you have, the most important thing is the institution. The laws of the institution, the policies, the procedures, the protocols, whatever, of the institution itself. And the institution needs to keep itself alive. And the work is like secondary. So in the way we did it, it was this content is at the heart of what we do. Okay, moving on. Is this cross-cutting themes. I know it looks like a necktie, but it's supposed to be a needle. And these were developed early on as well. So yes, you have your programs. Yes, they are projects, but here are cross-cutting themes, meaning all these things are in everything. These are systemic things in Forever Sabah. So the first is community engagement. Everything that we do here starts with community engagement. There isn't one project that doesn't have it. It's always grounded in community engagement. So engagement with the community in that place, in that landscape. Citizen science. Can you see that everything we do as citizen science, there's citizen science here, citizen science here, citizen science here. It is systemic, meaning science done by the community in that place to answer questions that they want to answer. So it's not science done by UMS or Oxford. They have questions, they come, Sabah, you're gonna be my laboratory. And I wanna answer this question, and then it's imposed on us. Spatial science. So that's big data, that's science from the satellite from 30,000 feet to answer big questions. Where are our forests? Where is our carbon? Where are the orangutan populations from the sky? Which part of Sabah has orangutans or elephants? So that's spatial science. Legal innovation is the policy and the law and everything here. Because with everything that we're doing, there's the limits and the parameters of policy and law. And sometimes we work with them. Sometimes we want to challenge them. Sometimes they need to be reformed or revised. So that's why we call it innovation. We didn't call it policy and law. Partners, collaborations, exchanges. Everything we do here is partnerships, collaborations, and exchanges. There is no one thing here that doesn't have government, community, civil society, often academia, all the sectors that I named earlier. So it's always this. Facilitation. Well, those of you who came to the last mountaintop, that is our modus operandi. We facilitate. We didn't make all these things happen in a top-down way. We didn't sit in a laboratory by ourselves and say, oh, by the way, Kinabatangan, we want to do this there. Everything was a facilitation process. And we say design and we say redesign because oftentimes we see that there needs to be a redesign of the format to address a problem. Communications. So that's how to tell the story, what story to tell of everything we do. Whether it's in Sabah or it's to the world or it's to funders or just anyone who will listen. And the last one, Forever Sabah Institute, is at the pin of the needle, is the learning, sharing space for all our work. So you can see that this is why this is cross-cutting, right? Can you understand? Why this is not a project and this is not a project, this is not a project. They're actually cross-cutting across the ecology. All right. Can you see now why it's an ecology? Does it make sense? Would you call this an organization chart? Would you call this, I don't know, like you all know your colleagues. You see here, you say, oh, I know who's here, I know who's here, I know who's here. You know everybody here. You know whose kampong is where, right? If you were to put on top of this the map of Sabah, you can see that we're everywhere. And you can also place that on the map of Sabah, right? And why, you can have something very small, let's say Kivatu Nature Farm. What else can I say is small? Project Padi, small, it's in here. But why there is a Sabah-wide story or context for it. Same with Kivatu. And why the issue, when you go back to here, is actually large. It's a system, the agricultural system. It's the palm system. It's the fishery system. All of them connect to laws. All of them connect to science. All of them have stakeholders. And the way what we do with stakeholders is that we facilitate and we bring them to the table. Biomimicry, you guys know what is biomimicry? Where you try to copy nature. So you build a building copying nature. To me, at least personally, there's a lot of that intention in doing this, copying nature. How does nature operate? Where do things pop up, blossom as issues or explode like a volcano as an issue? who comes around, who's interested, we go there. You go there, you facilitate something very quickly, you find people who want solutions, who want to create those solutions. They are so concerned that it's all about their lives that they will do it. And you do put something there, there's reciprocity. And they will bring in the currency, which to us, it's part of the circular economy, is reciprocity. So not everything is in terms of money. There is a lot of value in other untangible things, like reciprocity, like generosity. If you were to say in the Project Padi, what happened here, and you quantify what the villagers put in terms of their traditional knowledge, their blood, sweat, and tears, that's all part of that's part of a circular economy. That's currency that can't be quantified. I know that all of you, the reason why we're doing systems thinking is I know that all of you are in different parts of the system. You're not in all parts of the system. There's only, I think myself is probably the only person that is in all parts of the system. Rebecca and Andrew, you're in one part. Yes, you're here, but you're in a secretariat that isn't even here. It's in a way outside, but you know about this work. Neville is doing this work. He's overseeing this. He's also, so this is another thing that's happened over the years. Different people build different expertise, different interests. And then we see, okay, kalau dia sudah build capacity di sini, he has Najib, he has Rajima, he has Siti Fatima, he has blah, blah, blah. Okay, some of his time is freed up. Can he do what he's learned here in Sagama? You see what I mean? So you never have to be bored in Forever Sabah. It just depends how interested and open you are, because these are all the things you could get involved in. Not only that, you can build different programs and projects. So just because we have these focal areas, it is 25 years. We're only in the second wave. Different focal areas could come online, depending on, is it a hot topic? Like some people say the built environment, meaning architecture, blah, 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 should be a focal area. That case was made to us by Architract. Why is that not a focal area? Can Architract come within this mix and focus on that? Kat and I have talked about sustainable fashion. There are many things that could become part of the focal areas in the future. It isn't limited to this. It was just in the founding days or years, these were the top issues that popped up. So going back to the point that each of you may have knowledge of different projects or even programs. You may have an overview of a particular focal area, but no one has the overview of everything. And why we've done the mountaintops and the immersions 2021, and there are 12 of them, and 2022, is for you to become at home with all of this. For you to know how this works, this works, this works, this works, for you to have connected with those landscapes. And that, to me, was my attempt to take everybody a grade up, a couple of grades up in terms of your leadership, to be able to take over this into the next 20 years and beyond. I would like this year to end where everybody knows this and can talk about it with their eyes closed to anyone. Of course, you've all come in at different times and you don't always get to see this. But you can make it your own. This is home after all. It covers everything. Like I said, there's a few things that are not there, but I think they will, I hope after the systems thinking time that we deep dive that we have here, we looked at this again tomorrow. We can see, this is how we can improve this. This is how certain things can become more intentional, more explicit where they are implicit. like when we added nature, culture, economy. That was really powerful when we had that retreat and we came to that articulation. Um, and the coming, so Party Project was the first immersion. The next immersion was here, that was last month. Your next immersion will be here in June. Hopefully we can travel. And then you will get to see this and you will meet the team there. And it's very, very different from anything you've seen here. So as you can see, everything there is from FSI, all the offerings are about the various values and the kind of thought leadership that shapes our work. And the reason we're doing it also is that not every, like I said, every one of you have come in at different times. So how do we build a language between us that we can understand? And so when you do miss different parts of it, you don't have that common understanding with your colleagues. And you know, that does take time now for you to understand, because just like saying systems thinking doesn't mean you know it. And it doesn't mean that we do a 3-day session like we'll be experts. It's just to introduce the concepts and the language, and then we're on a journey of learning through experience. Thoughts, responses, feedback. Do you see this better now? Do you understand it better? Does it make sense? Do you see yourself in the mix? Can you also see this in the context of what Ibu Dini shared with us? There's some things that we think are here but are not articulated, and maybe by the end of this time we may want to improve this. This is a living ecology. This is not static. I think we don't want to change it every year, but we certainly will always evolve it. The petals of the Rafflesia are what we call programs. So you were there, Neville, when we decided this. And you were also there when we decided this was a program. Doesn't mean we can't change it. We can change everything. Just like laws can change it anytime. These are projects and partners. You remember that we called it projects and partners. So project, partner, meaning they kind of graduated. Coppel was one of LEAP's first projects in 2004-5. First partners, project partners. This was a project partner, but we don't fund them anymore. We don't, they were the ones who helped the project party with the training. That's a partnership. And we put the fees in the budget for them, for the project party. So a partner was paid from project, but we did start with funding for them, etc., but not anymore. We will evolve this. So one of the thinking I had was that from this systems thinking, once we have the sessions, the crash course tomorrow, then we have the chat, then we're gonna look at the ecology again, and we can revise it. If we want systems thinking mapping, systems mapping to be more explicit in our ecology. I think the reason why I'm very, very excited about always revising this with new groups, new teams, is for you to take ownership of it. Because now it's something presented to you and you were not part of creating it. Yes, you're in one part of it, but you didn't create the design. I mean, but many were. I didn't do this on my own. Every time it was revised, it was in a group process. Maybe when we did the artwork, I may have said, can you use this color or that color? But in the actual design or redesign, it was a group process. I think we used to put here future projects, but that space got taken by the UK backed project. So if I had this master, I would, and I did it myself unilaterally, I would have moved all this, squished it all, and made another empty place and put future project, because we must have an empty space. Every time I show this in all the presentations I've done, doesn't matter the audience, especially now on Zoom, from all over the world, people feel so liberated. I'm like, oh my God, that's like the most crazy systems intervention I ever saw. And they're like, wow, that's possible. In fact, even when I met Ellen MacArthur Foundation, you can see them there, the big, huge proponents of the circular economy. They only talk about the circular economy. So when I met them in London, presented this and said, this is what we're doing, they're like, holy crap, you are actually doing it. They are talking about the theory of circular economy. Yana, you have something to say? I think with what Ibu Dini said at her ending, when you just follow your heart and choose to do it, just do it. I think it's the same with our projects. All of those in the ecology are the ones that somehow we choose with our current capacities, interest, despite many other issues, projects that comes in between. Okay, yes, well said. One of the things that we don't, and nothing here echoes that that statement, is that we don't go somewhere where no one invited us, no one said there's an issue, and we just pandai pandai say, oh, we're gonna go there, we want to do that there, we want to dot 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 whatever. Everything was always based on a request, an issue. I mean, like HEH. I'm just gonna give that example. You know, basically the elephant asked for it. I mean, now first trip there to do this, to look at the watershed, the very, very first trip to Telupid, an elephant presented itself in one of the smallholder farms. So that's like, boom, 2 projects in one go. That was the beginnings of the smallholder livelihoods and the HEH in 2014. And that was actually the seed. The seed of the issue was the seeds of the smallholder livelihoods and HEH.
Okay, I think in this case, this is an opportunity for us to look into, say, day three. Day three is the complexity and the system in a way that, in my opinion, is open your mind and look at overall. Okay, for example, like us in the RSPO, we are connected to the elephant. We are connected to the sea because the Kinabatangan River goes to the sea. So open your mind in a way that don't don't feel that you are close at heart at what you're doing now, but open to see that we are actually interconnected and all the dots are there, just like Katrina says, one dot, but this is like too many dots, right? Yeah. So that's what I feel in a way that when we see this, don't be scared, but just absorb this and see how this system can work with us and how we can contribute to the system.
I think when the FS Ecology was born, and as it's grown and grown to become this system, I mean, certainly for me, the whole reason for Forever Sabah from LEAP was doing things also based on request. People say, we need to restore our lake, can you help us? We need to restore our watershed, can you help us? So we only went to places where we were invited. That was LEAP. And then we started to see themes in the issues. And then we started to survey, do some research on other initiatives around the world, Costa Rica, Madagascar, Bhutan, British Columbia, building ecosystem-based economies, all this. And we see what happens when a state takes a systemic approach to issues. What would it look like? And that was the question, with the question, where will we be in 50 years? Was inspired by how would we do something in a systems way that wasn't about one project and didn't have a long-term view or a sort of overarching vision, like moving from the linear economy to the circular economy. What is the linear economy? You cut all your resources, you get cash, but you've trashed your assets. Circular is you will always have your assets in perpetuity, but you have to use it in this manner. So there was a systems approach. We have slowly built the system and built the system and built the system. And why we're having this today is everybody to calibrate, integrate, understand this is the system. And if you're orienting your thinking, each person does in the organization, to systems, instead of just Cynthia thinking from a systems approach, everybody thinking from a systems approach, everybody leading your project from a systems approach, I think things will shift. I think there's one way for you to be able to answer yes is to make it your home, that you know where you are in this. It makes sense to you because you can connect to it and can see where you are. And that is certainly one of the intentions for this session, is that there is a new understanding and a greater understanding of this. So everybody walks away seeing where they are in the system and seeing the system. So when we go through tomorrow, look at the session, we have the systems thinking crash course with Rajesh, which is in 4 parts. There's an intro and then 3 modules. Between each module, he will chat with us to unpack it a little bit. Then we will chat with Bjorn, who saw the system of food in Singapore, and that lost sovereignty of food security. And you know how they call a garden city, right, Singapore? So he said, yeah, edible garden city. He wanted to make the garden edible. So his organization built gardens on government rooftops, hotel rooftops, et cetera, et cetera. And it's, of course, about food, health. So he certainly had a systems approach. So we had a chat with him. And then we are going to apply our systems thinking, new systems thinking heads back to this and say, what are things we would make more, articulate better? And it's not so much just about revising this. I want you to feel your place in this and your ownership in this. And if it improves or evolves, we are doing it together. So that's day 2. Day 3, we tackle complexity. And what is complexity? What are opportunities? And then we're going to connect the dots between complexity and systems thinking. What do you think? How do you think climate change and solutions for climate change connects with systems thinking? You think if climate change was in the FS ecology, where would it be? You think it would be a side project here to the focal area level inside the fund? Ooh, interesting. Clouds will be added for climate change or horizon. Okay, well, let's see. I mean, where will it go? And I think this is a really interesting question, because climate change will become so systemic. And then how you address it, whether it's renewable energy, whether it's farming or forests, which are all different mitigation and adaptation measures. So something to discuss lah. So day 3, tomorrow is a lot of content. Coming back to this, day 3, maybe hopefully after a night's sleep, when we talk about complexity, which is not about difficulties or complicatedness. Complexity is literally like a field of thinking. People teach complexity. The person we had here taught a little session, and we will look at that session again. We will look at it in the FS context, and then we will connect it to the systems thinking. And then hopefully by the end, we connect some dots.